Praise the Lord. May His name be glorified. The last two messages we have been considering the life and the ministry of a man called Nehemiah. We have seen that Nehemiah was a great man of God. In the first message, we have shared an introduction to the book. In the second message, we have considered something about Nehemiah. I have shared that Nehemiah was a cupbearer, most trusted governor of the Persian Empire. The understanding that we have of a cupbearer is somebody like who serves the tea. No, he was not like that. He was a governor who was entrusted with the responsibility of the drinks that will be served to king and the family, and also to VIPs who come for official meetings and all. His position is one of a governor, the most trusted governor, because in those days, emperors and the dignitaries were assassinated through food poisoning, especially by mixing poison with their drinks. So the most trusted person was put in charge of the drinks. Nehemiah was that man. So Nehemiah was a cupbearer. The second thing today we wanted to start with is that Nehemiah was a man appointed by God. He was a man selected by God. He was just not an ordinary man. He was a man selected by God for a specific purpose. I want to point out the truth that God is sovereign and He can use any man He wants. There is no limitation placed upon God. He does not choose people on the basis of their qualifications, educational qualifications, social status, etc. He chooses people on the basis of His sovereign will. However, He is always looking for godly people. And Nehemiah was a man God had appointed for His purpose. In the Old Testament, we have other men like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and we have a man like Mordecai. We have a man like Zerubbabel. We have many men who are employed even in the secular profession. God had chosen those men to accomplish His purpose. And Nehemiah was also a secular governor, now employed by the Lord to build His temple. Those people rose to the highest places in the secular field not simply because of their ability. They definitely were able men, because these secular emperors, they were not looking for godly people to be placed in charge of their different departments. They were looking for people who were able. However, when a God chooses a man, the Lord will elevate him not necessarily on the basis of his ability, but on the basis of the fact that God has a work to be done with that man. Nehemiah was one like that. So Nehemiah rose to the highest position in his secular life because he was a man sovereignly chosen by God. They were very able and faithful, trustworthy people, definitely. Therefore, the kings and others could use them confidently. However, the very reason behind their elevation to high places in secular life was not simply their ability, but the fact that these men were chosen by God. A third truth about Nehemiah is that Nehemiah was a man of deep spiritual values and interest. Nehemiah was born in captivity, and in all probability, Nehemiah had never been to Judea at this time. Jerusalem was a place he might have heard from his parents. However, Nehemiah knew enough about Judea and Jerusalem, like any other Orthodox Jew would know. He may have learned about Jerusalem from his parents. The parents may have told to him the stories about the glory of the temple Solomon built and all those things. And Nehemiah may have been excited about it, but the fact remains that Nehemiah had never seen the temple nor the city of Jerusalem. Nehemiah loved God's people and God's program very dearly. This fact is seen very clearly when we read the book of Nehemiah. He was a man of deep spiritual interest. When his cousins came from Judea to the palace in Shushan, the first questions Nehemiah asked were how the people are, how the people who escaped from captivity are doing. Secondly, he asked the question, how is the city of my forefathers, how the temple city is. So for both he got answer, and he was touched in his heart because he was a very spiritual man. The fourth thing that I wanted to share about Nehemiah is that he was concerned about God's people and about God's house in Jerusalem. Nehemiah chapter 1 verse 2 and 3, surprises us by the intense desire he had to know about his people and about his ancestors' city. Nehemiah's cousins or own brothers came for a visit from Judea, and he inquired two important questions to them matters. One about those Jews who returned to Judea from Persia. Secondly, about the city of Jerusalem. Basically, Nehemiah wanted to know how the Israelites who returned are doing and how the city is in what condition. Why Nehemiah should inquire these things? Nehemiah was a man who had a sensitive heart for the people of God. He was grieved seriously at the sad plight of the people, and Nehemiah was concerned about the welfare of God's people and God's house. He was a man of deep spiritual values and interest. So all these things, and Nehemiah was a man appointed by God. He was a cupbearer, an important position he held in his life. So overall, what we're saying is Nehemiah was not just an ordinary man in that sense, but yet on the other hand, he was an ordinary man like you and me, because he was faithful in his job, and I think that he rose to an important position. But more than that, because God had him in his mind to accomplish this matter of the building of the walls in Jerusalem and the rebuilding of the broken structures there. So Nehemiah was a man who was chosen by God. The important thing is Nehemiah feared God very much, the fear of God is the most important virtue in a man of God. Whatever other abilities a person has, if he does not fear God, what good is he? There are people who have no fear for God nor any sense of shyness for people, They are not ashamed of their bad conducts before people. What people will say, it's not their matter. What God thinks doesn't matter to them. They even deny God. We are living in a day and time where there are a lot of agnostics and a lot of atheists and practical atheists who live as if there is no God, and theoretical atheists who deny there is no God. Of course, then they cannot live as if there is a God. But Nehemiah was a man who feared God. When he thought about God, fear came to his mind, because God is a sovereign God. He is all authoritative. He is the creator of this universe. He is almighty, all-knowing, and all-present God. He does not depend upon anybody else. Uncaused cause of everything. When we think about God, the more we are afraid of God. Afraid in the good sense. We're more reverential about God because He is our creator. He is our sustainer. He is our redeemer. And Nehemiah was a man who feared God. It says that in chapter 5, Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 15, we read, "But the former governors that had been before me were chargeable unto the people, and had taken of them bread and wine, beside 40 shekels of silver. Yes, even their servants bear rule over the people, but so did not I, because of the fear of God." Nehemiah was in Judea for 12 long years at a time, and he was to get 40 shekels of silver as his salary. and then all the allowances, his expense and his staff and everything else. So a fairly large sum of money he was supposed to get every month. This money he was to take from the people, charge the people, tax the people, and take this money, and the rest of the money he used for other purposes. That was the pattern. Before Nehemiah assumed the office of a governor, the other men who were there as governors, they were all basically Jewish people, I believe. They all took money. These people who returned from Persia, they were extremely poor people. They have brought some money with them, but they have to live with that money. They have to build their own houses, and they have to build, their vineyards and olive plantations, and they have to cultivate for their food. Their livestock have to be cared for. So these were investing time, and they just came in, and so there was nothing there, barren land now, all broken down. So these people were to invest in the land, and so they needed so much money. Often they did not eat well, because these were the time when they were investing. These were the sowing time, not harvesting time. So money was needed, and Nehemiah knew that how hard it was for the people. The little money you have with you, either in the bank or in the hand, and you take it out every day for your daily expenses and living expenses, how long it will last? It's not going to last very. If there is no income has not been generated. They don't have employment. They don't have cultivation, farming. They just came in. So Nehemiah understood the difficulty of the people. That's what said, because of the fear of the people, that if I charge these people for my and my office people's livelihood, God is not going to bless us. He was afraid. So he said, I did not take the governor's salary and the allowances, and my people did not. He had been governor for 12 years. That's a considerable time. All 12 years he did not take any salary. Salary was to be collected from the people, and he didn't want it to, because he saw how poor the people were. All governors who ruled before him had taken the 40 shekels of silver as salary. They also took governors' allowances from the people. But Nehemiah did not take any money from the people. And it's amazing thing for me is that Nehemiah did not take money. Okay, he didn't. What about his staff? There will be a number of men who will be working for him in different departments. Like in any other government, there will be all kinds of departments and people, officers and clerical staff and all that. And interesting thing, Nehemiah somehow persuaded those people not to take salary. Work voluntarily for a few years until our land is, the cultivation come there, the vineyards start taking, giving yield, the olive trees will give yield, the fig trees will give yield, our cattle will multiply, and we will have, plenty, and then salary you can take, you can draw, but until then you do a free service for the people and for the Lord. Those people were persuaded. A good leader could persuade people very much. A good leader. When the leader himself is very covetous and money-minded, well, all the staff of his office will be more money-minded. That's what happens today in the world. In politics or in bureaucracy, wherever you go, money-minded people, they generate only money-minded subordinates. So they all together, like rapacious wolves, will tear apart the little lamb. Nehemiah said, no, I won't. I didn't do that. They lived on the money they saved while in Persia. Think of that. Nehemiah was governor in Persia for quite some time. We don't know how long. But during that time, Nehemiah saved as much as he could. He was a wise man, definitely. He is a Jew also. The Jewish people know how to invest their money. So Nehemiah may have invested his money wisely in different businesses, and he had a good return. And all that money he kept with him, and he is using them not only, I believe, for him, but also for his staff. Paid from the pocket. Why Nehemiah and his staff did not have money, take money? As I said, it is because they fear God. That's the only reason. In the book Nehemiah's expenses are given in the book of Nehemiah. We don't have time to go into it, but it's big. How many animals every day, how many birds every day, how many, fattened calves and how many goats and all the lambs and all these things was slaughtered, many kinds of birds, because hundreds of people will come to his office. He's a governor, the expense of a governor. The nearby neighboring governors and their staff will come to visit. And everybody has to be fed. Some will come to live for a couple of days. They have meetings and conferences. And all their expenses have to be paid. So big expenses. And Nehemiah was using money from his pockets. That's a godly man. He didn't want to charge the people. He never wanted to be a burden to the people because of the fear of God. People are extremely poor. They do not have big income. To collect money from those people would be burdening the people. Their conscience did not allow. Nehemiah's conscience did not allow him to take that. Not only that Nehemiah did not take any money, but as I said, his staff also. Well, his staff were all Jewish people, not to take money. That in itself is a miracle. Because they are the people like the merchant of Venice. They will demand for the pound of flesh, at any cost. They are business people. Now, those business people became very generous, living on their own expenses and feeding others with money from their pocket. That's a transformation. God's grace transforms people. It takes away our natural appetite for money and for many other things. When the Spirit of God works in the life of a person, great changes take place. Men of God whom God uses for His people are always considerate of others. They spend their hard-earned money for poor believers. What great example. We have people like Gehazi. Naaman of the Arabian, he has brought so much gold and so much silver and so many precious clothes and everything to gift it to Elijah, who has healed Naaman's leprosy. He wanted Elijah to take some, at least a little bit, but Nehemiah said, no, I have sworn with God of heaven that I will not take anything. I will not take anything. And that man actually went home, disappointed. Oh, little bit, I couldn't give him anything. He won't take anything. Gehazi was the assistant to Elijah, and he was here. Gehazi was assistant to Elisha. And he was listening everything. Elisha did not take from Naaman a great opportunity. What kind of a fool he is. Gehazi said in his heart, I don't want to be one like him. I'm going to take something. He ran after that man, and we know the story. He didn't realize that it came as a package. The gift package also contained the washed away leprosy of Naaman. It was also packed in it. Elisha asked him, Gehazi, where did you go? Is it time to earn money and purchase land and estates? And Gehazi denied, because people who do such things they are not supposed to do, they always deny. They have no problem, because lying in their budget is the smallest sin. Other sins are far bigger. So if a person can commit far bigger sins, smaller sins will very easily be committed. And so Gehazi denied, no, I didn't go anywhere. I was right around here. That poor man, he had the chance to become a person like Elisha. Elisha was the servant of Elijah, and he got double portion. Now Gehazi one day could have asked Elisha, I want a double portion. But he blew all his chances. The love of money is the root of all evil. We should never be. We should be like Paul. Paul called the elders from Troas, and he was speaking to them, and he showed his hands and said, these hands have labored for my needs and for the needs of those with me. Paul had many co-workers. At one time, I think he had more than 15 to 19 co-workers working with them. And he said, I have labored with my hand. Paul was the leader of the mission team. It's the leader's responsibility to ensure that the needs of the team is always met. And Paul did that. Paul told the Ephesian elders how blessed it is to give than to take. Our Lord also taught the same principle. It's better to give than to take. Nehemiah learned those New Testament principles and he practiced it. It's easy to preach about giving, but when it comes to giving out of your own pocket, yes, it's difficult. I know people who are very generous in giving money of the church to others. Very generously they will give. Others' properties they will give. But when it comes to their own money, they're so stingy, they will not touch it. Because that's for them and their children, not for others. Yes, Nehemiah was not a man like that. He made money, by hard labor, he made money and he gave money. God blessed him. Such great people we need. In the churches also we need elders like that. Church leadership should be men who give. So the man Nehemiah was a great, great example. Yes, he was a great example. Now in next session, God willing, we will consider the life of Nehemiah as a great builder. He was sent by God to Judea to build the walls and to repair the broken doors and everything. And we see how great a builder he was. Brothers and sisters, you have heard my message. Yes, I wanted to challenge you to imitate Nehemiah, an Old Testament character, but definitely who lived on New Testament principles of practical Christianity. May God help us. Let us live for God. Give all glory to Him. Have a concern for God's people. Have the fear of God. May His name be glorified and God bless you. Amen.